So I got to thinking that a really good video would be to show how really easy it is to get on 10 meters, which is the only real HF band that's accessible for technicians. So if you're thinking about getting your technician license, you have but one choice basically, and that's 10 meters for HF. And you may be thinking to yourself, is it worth it? Let's investigate that a little bit and see if it really is. So my radio background came from CB. I think I've mentioned this before. Back in the late 80s and early 90s, I was into the CB craze and had quite a bit of equipment, bought and sold a lot of radios, ended up with a Cobra 142 GTL. That was my main radio for many, many years. And I ended up modifying that radio. Just checking this piece of coax to make sure it's good. And like most people, CB and ham alike, I just went out and bought antennas. I bought my first antenna was a used antenna. It was a 5/8 wave ground plane that I put up. I used that for a while, and then I went out and I bought an Antron 99, which is today's Solarcom 99. You can still buy that antenna, and that was a pretty good antenna. And I ended up getting a 4-element, actually it was a 5-element high gain Yagi, and it was a CB beam strictly for CB frequencies, very narrow banded but relatively high gain for the shortness of the boom of that antenna. And so I put that up, and then I wanted to expand the frequency range of where I could receive, and modified radios to get up into the freebanding areas that a lot of people were using back then. And that narrow banded 5-element Yagi wasn't going to work. So I ended up modifying that and turning it into a 4-element beam. But right about that time, I started investigating with building antennas, actually building them from scratch. And the very first antenna that I built was just a piece of coax that I made an antenna out of. So you can just take an ordinary everyday section of coax, and what we're going to do today is we're going to turn this into an antenna to show how really simple it is to get on the air with very little cost and very little means. This can be a budget hobby if you go about it in the right direction, especially for 10 meters, because the rest of HF, it's going to cost you some money. I think the Zygo G90 is probably the entry radio for HF bands other than 10 meters. But that's a radio that costs right around $450, somewhere right around there, $450. Sometimes on sale for right around $4. So what I would call a budget radio, although it is the cheapest entry. And the next thing up from that would probably be a Yaesu FT891 mobile, and then the Yaesu FT710 base. So those radios go for in the 600s and 700s respectively. So once again, if you're on a budget and you don't want to spend a lot of money to get into a new hobby, the rest of HF presents a barrier. And I don't know about used equipment. I haven't had any luck buying used equipment. It seems like every time I go search for used equipment, it costs just as much as the new stuff, so why bother? So when I got my license, I went straight to general. I lucked out. I took the tech test and passed it. And they typically will offer, do you want to go ahead and take the general while you're here? And I said, yes, let's do that. And I sat down and passed the general. So I went straight to general. But if I had not done that, I would have been happy on 10 meters as a tech, because before I went out and bought a new radio, I forced myself to use what I had. And you're going to see what I had here in a little bit, because we're going to hook it up and use it on air. But what I started with was a CB radio that was modified to go up to 10 meters. So it would get up to 28.300, 28.400, 28.500, and work just fine up there. So I forced myself to make 30 contacts with that radio before I even thought about going out and buying something else. And I did that deliberately because I just don't like throwing money at something that I may lose interest in. So I forced myself to do that. Now, if you have a tech ham license, there are quite a few entry-level 10-meter radios that you can buy starting at just over $100, going up to perhaps $300. They're all mobiles. They're all usually typically about in the 40-watt range as far as power goes. But 10-meter isn't a band that requires a lot of power, so not really a concern there. So you can be all in and making contacts on 10 meters for a few $100s. So it doesn't have to be an expensive hobby. And then if you decide you want to upgrade at some point, then you can do that. But anyway, let's get on to building an antenna. So how do you turn a piece of coax into an antenna? Well, we're going to turn this piece of coax into a dipole. And the way that I do that is, I've already checked this to make sure this is a good piece of coax. This came out of one of my vehicles, and it's just simply a 15-foot RG58 stranded piece of coax. So I'm going to whack the end off of it and turn it into a dipole. We're going to cut back the insulation. Now, you can do this for not just 10 meters. You can do it for 6 meters. You could do it for 15 meters, although getting up in frequency, it's going to be a little more difficult. But for today, we'll just do the 10 meter because I want to use my modified CB on 10 meters to make some contacts if we can. So a dipole on 10 meters is going to be approximately 8 feet 4 inches. So I'm going to measure off 8 feet 4 inches. Which is right there. It's very likely that's going to be a little bit long because there are some factors that will drive it shorter. So we should be safe. Now I'm just going to strip the insulation off. And to strip the insulation off, I'm just using a razor blade. So I score all the way around it. And now I'm just going to score the length. You want to be careful that you don't cut through the shield. And after I do that, we should be able to just peel it right back off. So now we have a bunch of uninsulated coax. And what you have to do is you have to take the shielding and you just run it down toward where you scored it. So all I'm going to do is loosen this stuff up. Now I found that coax brands differ, and sometimes this isn't as easy as what this one is looking to be, but anyway, what we want to end up with is something like that. And then we're going to separate this. And without ripping the shield, what we want to do is just pull that center conductor out of there. And then after that, we're just going to straighten this back out. And I'm going to length check it. What typically will happen is the shielding will end up a little bit longer. So I'm going to length check it real quick here. And it did a little bit. That's a couple of inches. So I'm going to go ahead and whack even more than that, because once it's under tension, it's going to stretch even more. So now we have two conductors. And what we're going to do is we're going to tie a rope to each one of these, and we're going to suspend this horizontally in a tree. So I'm going to grab some power cord, and we're going to do that. So I'm deliberately not going to use an antenna analyzer or nano VNA to check this antenna once I get it up in the air, just to prove that you can do it. What we're going to do is we're just going to tie these together. It's very likely that I'll have to trim. I know that going in. That's our ground side. And that's our center conductor. And I'm going to throw this paracord up in a tree and get it at least 16 feet off the ground. That's very critical whenever you're getting an antenna up in the air. Try and get at least half a wavelength off the ground. So half a wavelength for 10 meters is about 16 feet. So we're going to shoot for that. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is see if I got the length right. Now, I didn't use a common mode choke at the junction of this antenna. Which you may not be able to see, but it's hanging right up there in front of the camera. So there's no common mode choke. And that's a concern because at certain coax lengths, the coax can actually radiate quite a bit of RF. So not a good situation. We don't want that to happen. And one way to avoid it, and I've modeled this to verify it, but just avoid odd lengths of coax. So if our resonant length at a quarter wavelength is about 8 feet, then we want to avoid odd multiples of 8 feet. So we want to avoid a coax length of 8 feet between the radio and the feed point of the antenna, and 3 times 8 or 24 feet, 5 times 8 or 40 feet. So we want to avoid all those. I ended up with a coax length of 41 feet, which is very, very close to the 5th harmonic. So I added another 6 feet just to push me away from that and try and get to an even harmonic. So 2 times 8 feet would be 16 feet, and 4 times 8 feet would be 24, let's say 32 feet, etc. So avoid odd multiples of whatever a quarter wavelength is for your particular frequency that you're transmitting on. And it won't eliminate the coax from radiating, but it sure will reduce it. So, okay, so I'm showing 28,406. Let's get down to, there's 28,306. I'm going to do an SWR check real quick. I'm going to do this on AM. AI7VV test. So that was a 1.5 to 1. There's 495. AI7VV test. Still 1.5 to 1. So I'm going to leave it right where it is. Let's see if we can find a contact to make. So as a technician, you get from 28.300 to 28.500 for voice. So let's stick around that area.
California has found repeaters here almost every day.
Calling DX and standing by for the call. QZX. KK4NVD. Kilo 104 Bravo Delta Whiskey. Good afternoon, my brother. 5-7 in Brazil. QSL. And thanks for 35 in South Florida. Thanks for coming. Stay safe, stay well, and I hope to talk to you again. Have a good season. Good luck. Romeo X-Ray Echo, QSL. Thank you, my friend. All good for you. Enjoy on the band. Enjoy the band. 73, amigo. Oscar Mike India again. Kilo, Quebec 4, Oscar Mike India. Daniel, thank you for the contact from Tennessee. 58 for you. Yeah, beautiful modulation. This is 6 Echo 1, Romeo X-Ray Echo. Repeat, number 6 Echo, number 1 Romeo X-Ray Echo. QSL. You are set. 6 Echo 1, Romeo X-Ray Echo. Mexico City is calling.
Alpha India 7 Victor Victor.
6 Echo 1, Romeo X-Ray Echo. Negative, QRT, my friends, QRT. Thank you for all. Thank you, 73. God bless you. Okay, W7 Kilo Papa Lima. Hello, Jerry, VK3 CWB. Your report, well, I don't know, it's about 5 and 1 at best. Jerry, 5 and 1. My apologies, I thought you were my good friend K2, you 2 too. You were raised
VK2WAN, calling CQDX and standing by.
Alpha India 7 Victor Victor.
Victor Victor, try it again.
Alpha India 7 Victor Victor.
This is Victor Kilo 2 Whiskey Alpha November. CQ, CQDX, CQ, CQDX, Victor Kilo 2 Whiskey Alpha November. VK2WAN, calling CQDX. Victor Kilo 2 Whiskey Alpha November, calling CQDX and standing by.
Alpha India 7 Victor Victor.
Victor Echo again. QRZ, VK2WAN calling CQDX, QRZ. CQ, CQDX, Victor Kilo 2 Whiskey Alpha November, VK2WAN calling CQDX and standing by.
Alpha India 7 Victor Victor. AI 7 VV.
Alpha November 7 Victor Victor, QSL.
Alpha India AI 7 VV. Roger.
Alpha India 7 Victor Victor, QSL.
That is correct.
Thank you. Yeah, I heard you right down in there before. I've got there's some QRN, I think, some solar activity happening and making it a bit hard. It's pulsing through every now and then, so we'll give it a go. You've got Wayne at this end, Whiskey Alpha Yankee November Echo, and I'm located in Sydney. Back to you.
Roger. Yeah, I'm on a very low power station. It's only 20 watts. The name is Rick Romeo India Charlie Kilo. Roger.
Yeah, copy, Rick. Thanks, mate. And you're located in Nevada, QSL?
QSL.
Great stuff, mate. Did you say you're only on 25 watts or something? QRP station, over?
Correct. 20 watts.
Okay, mate, no worries. I've got you in the log. I'll give you a signal report. Come back again, and I'll see if I can give you one, mate. Over.
Okay, it bands in and out. It's going to be hard to do. You're about 5'3" here.
All right, mate. I'm going to let it go. I'll put you in the log, and we've got a confirmation of this conversation, and I'll conditions, Rick. So.
73 VK2WN from AI7VV. Thank you for the contact. Well, I think that'll just cap the day right there. I'm going to stop with that. I don't think I'll beat that. So, Nevada to Australia on 20 watts and a homemade coax dipole. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you on the next one.